Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to get started in just a moment. Thanks for coming out this evening with us. If anyone would like to speak tonight during the public comment period, we have multiple comment periods. So the very first one is going to be at the beginning of the agenda, and that's just any kind of general comment that somebody would have that they would like to make and put it on the record. If you can, if you haven't done so already, it'd be nice to have a speaker's comment card that would be turned into Becky Bennett, far on my right. But if it moves you and you haven't filled that out, please just come on up, state your name, and let us know what you'd like to talk about. Then we'll have further comment periods coming up for two items that are on tonight's agenda that are part of the public hearing. And I will call each one of those separately. So if you're here for one of the agenda public comment periods, please at that time, just go ahead and come up at that time. Okay, so we're going to begin. The February 10th, 2022 City of Friendswood Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting is now called to order. We will begin this evening by receiving any communication from the public or committee liaisons to the commission. To comply with provisions of the Open Meetings Act, the commission may not deliberate on subjects discussed under this agenda item. However, the commission may direct such subjects be placed on a later regular commission agenda for discussion and or possible action. Please note that public comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per person. A yellow light located on the podium should light up, indicating that you have 1 minute remaining to wrap up, and then a red light will come on when your time has expired. Also, out of respect for those speaking during the public comment period, please refrain from any outbursts or interruptions which could disrupt the meeting and discourage others from speaking. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak at this time? Okay, seeing no one. Oh. No. Next is our consent agenda. These items are considered routine or ministerial in nature and will be enacted with one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of items unless the commissioner so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting held Thursday, January 13th, 2022, and the replat of Reserve C of the Crawford Business Park to subdivide one commercial reserve into two commercial reserves?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Shows to be unanimous. Okay, next on the agenda are our action items. According to the Planning and Zoning Rules of Procedure R 2020-17, all action of the commission shall be made by an affirmative vote of 4 or more members of the commission present at such commission meeting. Our first action item tonight is to consider approval of the site plan for an additional parking area at Friendswood Animal Hospital located at 1405 South Friendswood Drive. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Aubrey, is there a staff summary?
Yes, sir. This is the Friendswood Animal Hospital. It's an existing business located at 1405 South Friendswood Drive. They are proposing to move their dumpster further away from 518, which is a good thing. I think they were grandfathered in under the no screening requirement as well, so that's an improvement. And they are going to also add some parking spaces, add driveway access to Winding Way, and which will put them over the minimum parking requirement. So that's a good thing.
Right. I don't know if is the applicant here tonight, and if they are, do they like to make any comments?
I don't think they're here.
Okay. Okay. And then moving to discussion, I'll start with Commissioner Mann.
I think this has multiple benefits. The dumpster's now out of the way. There's multiple entrance and exits and more parking. It's fantastic.
All right. Rich?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions, and unfortunately the applicant's not here, so I'll direct them towards you, Aubrey, and you're allowed to say, I don't know.
Okay.
Does the addition of the 6,000 square feet of impervious surface area require a buy-in from the drainage district? Does this I noticed that there were a lot of reviews, but they were not one of them. And I didn't know if that affected the flooding issues associated with this change.
Yes, so they would submit a preliminary and final drainage plan to the drainage district
Okay.
and get approval to purchase regional detention.
And that's a whole
through them.
parallel path to ours and is going to happen on its own.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fair enough. I'm a little concerned about the parking, the cut-through that they're going to establish where people will be cutting through their parking lot to get to Winding Way instead of going around the Exxon station. However, one of the high-ranking official with the city said, well, I used the kids' corner one next door to cut through anyway, and so maybe it's already solved anyway, so I guess I shouldn't get too upset about it. I would like to request the applicant, if possible, to, while they're doing this work, to put a sidewalk in front. They do not have a sidewalk. The adjacent property does, and the property on the other side is about to have a new sidewalk, so there will be a gap in the sidewalk along 518, and it would be nice to have contiguous sidewalk there. And so a lot of times we use these mobilization of construction equipment to get a sidewalk put in at the same time, and I would like you to carry that message forward to them, please, to see, let's say, that their chance of approval, well, is better. And as we talked a little offline, there's an issue about the trees. There's a very heavily wooded lot that encompasses where the driveway is now. And if you look at the drawing L1, which isn't up there, but it shows the trees that are, well, maybe it is there. In light, it shows trees that are remaining. But that whole area is covered with trees, and I didn't see a distinction where there were a few large trees that were outside where they're about to put it in. It seems like there are trees that will need to be mitigated, and it is likely that those have been missed.
Okay.
And so what I'd like to do is have a check on that to see if there is an issue associated with trees. And having said that, that might mean that we need to.
It will.
It will mean that we need to table this.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were going another direction. Go on.
Where did you think I was going?
That we had to amend the motion to approve based on the responses of
Oh,
that.
well, we can do that. I guess that would be okay.
We can, yeah, staff, if you amend the motion for staff to verify the trees and mitigation that would be required, we'll take care of that and make sure that they do mitigate any
It
required
might
trees.
substantially change the landscaping around the entire item, and it takes away any encouragement I have for the sidewalk or any control we have over the sidewalk. So I'm kind of thinking, did they seem like they were in a great hurry on this? I mean, would 2 weeks affect them dramatically? And that's a really unfair question to ask you. But
They are currently doing construction on the building, so I would assume they probably would want to do it quicker while they're already mobilized there.
right. I just don't know what my power is if I say, hey, I'd like a sidewalk, and they say no, and we've already approved it. They're moving on.
Well, sidewalks are required on commercial developments, and they're doing site improvements, and like I said, they're gonna have concrete trucks out there with the
So it may be
pavement
required
of
anyway.
the driveway.
They're putting a sidewalk on the Winding Way side.
The sidewalk is already there on the Winding Way.
Yeah, okay.
They're
Yeah, it's
actually
already on
removing
there.
some sidewalk where they're putting the cut through.
And then the ADA.
They're right, all the ADA requirements.
Right, yeah.
Well, we can, just include that in your motion, we'll definitely talk to them and,
Okay, well then,
Well, wait, let's get all the comments
that's
out.
fair enough. That's all the comments I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Kerner.
So this, Aubrey, I'm hoping maybe you can answer, and maybe it was already answered. Is there already an existing sidewalk on Winding Way and it just doesn't exist on 518 side?
yes.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like the idea of having this here. I like the improvements that it's gonna make in the general area. You know, the cut through is an issue no matter where you are in the city. And so I don't see that as a limiter necessarily. I am concerned about the trees though, now that Commissioner Sasson brought that up. And so I would like to make sure that gets resolved before we give a formal go ahead. And if that's contingent upon how we make the following motion, then I'd be okay with it.
Commissioner Hinckley.
I would just echo Commissioner Sassen's statements on the sidewalk. I think that would be nice to have along the main road. As far as pass through, I just think maybe a speed bump or two would probably help that. So I'm good.
Or a wall that says we can't go through. Exactly.
Commissioner Clark.
I share the concern about the trees. I was looking at it the same way, and I wasn't sure at all that the new tree ordinance, tree mitigation standards that we did some work on recently would have been applied in this case, and I didn't see a write-up on it, so I'm asking the question as well. I am a little, I guess, curious more than anything else what the motivation is. Is this all because they're going to enclose the patio pad behind the building that they have to do this? I could only guess. What-
They have been doing some renovations to the existing building. So I'm assuming that those alterations probably did drive some additional, the need for additional parking.
If I can interject, I've been there twice in the afternoons recently, and their parking lot is entirely full. So I'm guessing they're busting at the seams.
Okay.
Well, and
am I-
with COVID situations, I think a lot of, like, you're having to wait in your car. And so maybe, maybe
Yeah.
there's more demand with that. I don't know.
Okay, well, thanks. I do feel like there is lots of tree cover in there that is going to be somehow changed, so I don't really understand how that can be done within the context of this site plan, but I guess that's it. Thanks.
Okay, the only comment that I would make that hasn't already been made or question asked is that if you've been out to this area, although parking lots rarely improve necessarily an area, a parking lot in this case will improve that area. I mean, just even visually. So I think this makes perfect use for that space because you're not going to do anything else with it. So I think this makes perfect sense, but we do need to address the trees. So
I think this is the only remaining, like, undeveloped little portion in that, I guess, island between Winding Way and 518. So,
but there's trash back there, construction debris, there's all kinds of things.
yeah, so this will
back
help
there.
keep it clean.
So with that said, Aubrey, let me just get your opinion. That we obviously probably have two ways to get at this to get the same result. We can withdraw our motion, and we can have a motion and see if it passes to table it, and then we'll rediscuss it and just find out what they're going to do about the trees at the next meeting. Or we can do as we discussed. We can approve it based upon. I at first thought amending the motion, the approval contingent, but it really seems like this is, maybe with as many issues on this, that maybe the right way is tabling. But what do you think procedurally?
I think staff can handle the tree mitigation. It's pretty straightforward in the ordinance. I mean, it's not really subjective. I mean, once we figure out the trees that are existing, I think there may just been some misunderstanding that they needed to show those. So we can we'll get their, which trees are where the concrete's going, and then we can apply the mitigation requirements.
Right. It's all spelled out.
Yeah.
We have to mitigate
Yes.
for those. And the sidewalk. We would also probably make that part of our amended motion as well to investigate. I don't know, are we in a position to require a sidewalk as a commercial development?
Yeah, it's required. Usually, like, if they're not touching that part of the development, then we may not, require the landscaping or the sidewalk or something. But we've had a big push, and we're spending city dollars to get all of our infill sidewalks done in other areas of the city. So I think we can require. I mean, it's a requirement for commercial development to have a sidewalk, even though it's open ditch.
Okay, Commissioner Mann, you go ahead, and if you would like to amend your motion, you feel free. And
Okay, so I'd like to amend my motion to approve contingent upon the tree mitigation and the request for a sidewalk on 518.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Shows to be unanimous. Okay, our next action item is to consider approval of proposed amendments to Appendix C, zoning ordinance Section 7J, Plan Unit Development, to the general purpose and description to add criteria to qualify for a plan unit development, decrease the percentage of allowable change in land use, add an expiration of 2 years, and add standards for revocation. We will now open the public hearing to receive comments, both oral and written, regarding the proposed amendments. Becky, is there a staff summary?
Yes, sir. So the subcommittee, the ordinance subcommittee had looked at our planned unit development ordinance and come up with some suggestions based on feedback from council, the commission, and y'all saw it previously. Nothing's changed since then. The basic changes are to provide a base zoning district, which in the language, after talking with city attorney, we're gonna tweak base to say previous zoning district, just to clean it up a little bit. That would be the only thing. We're gonna create some criteria in the PUD that the applicant must meet. Specify that the commission can consider detention and retention areas as open space, but it is not awarded as a matter of right. It needs to be an amenity and attractive. Decrease the allowable change in land use from 25% to 10%, and that number, it was 25 and then 5% and then up to 10%, and we'll see how this one goes. And most importantly, add an expiration date for PUDs. If they have not begun or made any kind of substantial progress within 2 years, then the PUD would expire. If it expires, it's basically a dormant PUD. If somebody wanted to come in and pursue that, whether it be the same or slightly different, they would have to go back through the commission and city council because, you know, things change over the years. I think that was the bulk of it, unless, did you have anything to add? Okay. Yeah, so this is the official public hearing. We'll make a recommendation and then it will go to city council for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak for making this change? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak against making this change? Seeing no one, the public hearing for this topic is now closed. The commission will now consider and take possible action regarding the proposed amendments. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. We've already had the staff summary, so Commissioner Hinckley?
Yeah, so we did a lot of work in the subcommittee on this, a little bit of back and forth too, discussions with others, and I think these are changes we needed to make, especially the on the percent of change and the expiration date, and having that expiration date not only based off of progress being performed, but that also being consistent progress. That's it for me.
Commissioner Clark?
Thank you. Yep, I was in that subcommittee for a while, so I felt like I should be the seconder on this. And I agree that we've done a fair amount of homework. We've benchmarked against other communities and activities, and think these are reasonable changes. It's not a case of, in every case, every element of the change is not one of the cases where everything is sort of right or wrong, black and white. There is a graduation of feelings surrounding some of these elements, and so I suspect there will be discussion, but in particular the 10% number is one that I think may come under discussion. But I think it's a good attempt at a reasonable number, and I support it.
Commissioner Mann?
I appreciate the subcommittee's work on it. I agree with Commissioner Clark that the 25%, 10%, but I think the 10% is a reasonable recommendation to council, so I'm good with this.
Commissioner Sassen?
Yeah, we've talked about this at previous meetings. I have nothing to add. I think we're where we need to be.
Commissioner Carter?
Nothing to add. I support this.
I know we've done a lot of work, and the subcommittee has done a lot of really good
We have.
work on this, so I appreciate those efforts. The only thing I guess I will just add on that 25% versus 10% change, I draw some comfort from the fact is that, one, this is a number, or this is a category of land use that the developer has selected prior to submitting the PUD. So it's not something being dictated, it's something being supplied by them. And then two, we're seeing some developers come in with 10% as their standard as well. So that, I draw some comfort from that. So, yeah, no, if there's any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Shows to be unanimous. All right. Okay, our final action item is to consider approval of a variance request from Appendix B, the subdivision ordinance, Section 8C1, for a habitable building to encroach 15 feet and 8.25 inches into the required 50-foot pipeline setback on the property located at 2601 West Parkwood Avenue. 1 acre of land being a part of Abstract 184, page 2 of the Mary Sloan Survey, Track 18, Galveston County, Friendswood, Texas. We will now open the public hearing to receive comments, both oral and written, regarding the variance request. Aubrey, can you provide the staff summary?
Yes, sir. So as stated in the agenda item, this is a request to encroach the required 50-foot pipeline setback for a habitable structure of 50 feet. The encroachment will be approximately 15 feet, 8.25 inches. This is a new fire station. The previous fire station has been demolished. And so this is part of a bond project to construct a new station. The pipeline that's in the ground currently is an 8-inch crude oil pipeline. And just for clarification, the church granted this easement to the pipeline company. It's a 30-foot easement, and it is somewhat of a restricted easement in that there are no more pipelines allowed in the easement, and it only allows for one 8-inch crude oil line, and it had to be a minimum of 36 inches deep. So there won't be any more pipelines added to the easement. The subject tract, we did a rezoning on it. You're probably getting pretty familiar with this property. So we did the rezoning on it, and the property is only 120 feet wide and about 367 feet deep. And I think we have some representatives here tonight of the city and the fire department if y'all have questions.
Great. So anybody from the fire department, if you'd like to speak on this topic, we'd love to hear it at this time. Any comments?
I believe we were going to let the city engineer speak first.
Please.
Well, whoever would like to speak on this topic for the applicant, since I
was thinking of procedurally, I could wait until you had your discussion so that we can have some back and forth.
Okay, I think we can make that work. I think we'll have enough questions. We're going to get you up here, for better or worse. Okay. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak for making this change? Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak against making this change? Okay. Seeing no one at this time, the public hearing for this topic is now closed. The commission will now consider and take possible action regarding the proposed variance request. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Kerner.
Yeah, so I recognize the significance of this and the improvement it will make to city safety overall, and so that's why I support this. I recognize that it is it will require a variance to the 50-foot setback, but it is within the 25-foot setback, and so I believe that still maintains a level of safety for the adjacent property. Plus, as was mentioned earlier, the adjacent property is the church that does not at this time have any plans to develop on that property. So to me, there's plenty of buffer there from a safety and a public safety perspective. That's all I have.
Bill, since you're up here, maybe if you had some comments that you'd like to make.
Yes, sir.
That's okay.
Good evening to you all. I'm Hill Ives. I'm the Director of Engineering here at the City of Friendswood. Before I jump into some comments that I have on this, I wanted to bring something up. There was some discussion on the sidewalks a little while ago on the item on the animal clinic. And as you all know, here recently the sidewalk fund is no more. There was some money in that fund, and I wanted to recognize an individual who was working the magic and taking that fund and having sidewalks installed throughout town, and that's our project coordinator, Bria Whitmire, right here in black, and she's probably gonna tell me she didn't appreciate that, calling her out on Monday, but so let me just jump into a couple of comments, and I will start out by saying that I'm not a pipeline expert. Everything that I've learned during the process of this has come through input from various sources. There's been research by some members of my staff. When I first learned about this encroachment, we made a phone call to Chief Cause, and because we wanted to hear straight from him, if this was a concern of his, then this is not even something that we wanted to pursue if this was going to be a major concern of his. So here we are tonight, and I wanted to go ahead and address a couple of questions that I wrote down that maybe can help address some questions you guys might have. And I'm just going to go down the line real quick. So the first thing is, I know that there's always the concern that you might have be setting some sort of precedent. And in this case, you might be asking yourself, what's to keep another commercial business from asking for a variance? And I think the point of view I have on that is, if a commercial business were to seek a similar variance, if they provided sufficient evidence that to state their case that public health and safety will not be compromised, I think that it's definitely something that should be considered. We have provided you guys with quite a bit of backup material on this, and I didn't read it through it all, but I looked at it enough to understand that this is a regulated industry, that there's a lot of consideration put into the safety of the public and the integrity of these pipelines, especially in urban areas like what we have here. So Aubrey kind of already touched on this, but another question I've written down was what's to keep Genesis from installing a high-pressure gas line closer? She already addressed that. That line is the only one that can be installed there, but let's say that was not included as part of the easement. What sort of backup do you have after that? Well, the answer is that the city has the authority to approve or reject the installation of a new pipeline. We do have a city ordinance that this allows the installation of high-pressure gas lines within 50 feet. And we've had some applications come through in the time I've been here for 2.5 years now, and we've had some applications come through, and that process is it goes through my office, it goes through Aubrey's office, it goes through the fire marshal office, and it is something that the city does take a look at, and if there's something that is not adding up, for instance, it's encroaching on an existing structure, then that's something that the pipeline company will have to address at that time. In general, what I've found in dealing with pipeline companies is they don't like to rock the boat. They like to err on the side of caution. Good example is when we were constructing Friendswood Lake Boulevard, we had a Genesis pipeline out there. They're really cautious about their pipelines, and Genesis was out there, and they had an inspector on that job every single day for a couple of months, and his job was to babysit the project because they were working on top of a pipeline. That pipeline was 20 feet deep, and so it kind of shows you how seriously they take safety and around their pipelines. So another question I have here: does this action put the facility, its tenants, or contents at risk? Well, the answer is well, the product is in the pipeline is crude oil. It's not a high pressure gas line. It's not going to have if there were a spill to ever occur in a pipeline like this, it's not going to cause a major fireball like we had down on Castlewood a couple of months ago. But I did want to also mention again that we looked up some data on the on pipelines, and found some data that said that 99.999997% of gas and crude oil is moved from place to place without incident. So then again, the pipelines are take safety very seriously. Another question, what are the alternatives? Well, the alternatives are to look at other properties, but I will tell you what the disadvantages to that. The city has a ISO, or Insurance Services Office rating of Class 3. The lower number you go, the better. Class 3 is really good, especially knowing what other communities, what their classification is. Class 3 tells you that you have plenty of water. That's the public works side of me coming out here to mention we're providing plenty of water across the city to help fight fires. It tells you that you're located within a certain distance from a fire station, stuff like that. And so that's a consideration that we would have to look at if we were to look at the possibility of having to move a fire station. As we all know, land here in Friendswood comes at a premium, so it's not a really cheap affair to go that route. Does this action conflict with future growth and development of the city? No, it does not. You've already got a fire station there. We're not growing the tract of land. It's going to remain at 1 acre. It's going to remain a property where the fire station or fire department will continue to do their training. So there wouldn't be any consequence there. So I guess that's really the brunt of the questions. Maybe I've answered some of the questions you guys might have, but I'm more than happy to answer anything that we haven't already thought about. So
Thank you very much. You'll
Yes,
stay close by.
I will.
Chief, did you have any comments to add, or Brian?
Just stack a little bit of the safety concept on it.
Great.
There's 2.6 million.
You could, just for the record, for
Okay.
the people watching this, the 3 people that watch it.
My name is Stan Kozlowski. They call me Chief Kaz. I'm the chief of Friendswood Fire Department. All right. There's 2.6 million miles of underground pipeline in the United States, as close as they can figure today. Texas alone has 225,000 miles of underground pipeline. The majority of these underground pipelines are fusion bond epoxy coated steel. This particular 8-inch line is manufactured to that level, and it also operates at minimum pressure 600. This one operates just a little bit above that and well below the 1,000 PSI rating. As far as working with pipelines, I spent over 20 years on the ship channel with the Port of Houston Fire Department running the fireboats, and everything is a pipeline out there. Some of the issues that we've had was some of them that were so old, we didn't know where they went when they started doing land development, but some of those old lines are still holding. Right now, it is the absolute safest way to transport hazardous material, and that's where you talk about crude oil, biodiesel, items like that. It's an amazingly safe method. In fact, in Texas, the last 5 years, there hasn't been a significant issue. And what they level as a significant issue means that there can't be any injuries, and the maximum level of a leakage is 5 barrels. So that puts it just over 100 gallons. So that's an amazing safety record. We're by far better having pipelines, and we have a lot of pipelines moving through Friendswood. Hill can tell you that. In fact, I lived at a house that had a pipeline, 2 ethylene pipelines, 8 feet off the back of my house. And all I did is just tell my son, don't dig too deep. So the safety is good. The safety is good there. We have an excellent, they're well marked. There's requirements by NFPA, National Fire Protection Administration, on marking the pipelines. The overreach or the overstructure is done by the United States Department of Transportation, an administration under them called the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, and the state of Texas. The pipelines are also regulated by the Railroad Department. So we've got some good overwatch. We've got some good rules in place. And, if you look at it, money does drive the bus. And in this case, there's a lot of money made off the pipelines moving product. So they want to protect them. And as Hill said, they're kind of don't rock the boat. They don't want to mess anything up, and they want to keep it as safe as possible. So the location of this pipeline is good. The property positioning is also good. And if we had an issue similar to this come up with someone else, the same as Hill said, if it meets the requirements and there's a reasonable level of safety involved, this really, this goes back to when we thought Friendswood had all the land in the world.
Right. Yeah. Okay, if you guys would just hang out for just a second, because I bet you're going to have a question or two. I will come back to you, Commissioner Kerner, based on any further follow-up from.
No further.
Okay, okay.
No other questions for me. I actually studied this, and having a background in aerospace engineering and understanding fluids and fluid mechanics, I have no issues with this pipeline.
Okay. Commissioner Sasson.
So I actually used to run a natural gas pipeline company. I was the operations manager, for better or worse, several years, and I got out of that job, fortunately. But so I have a little familiarity with pipelines, as you guys do as well. And I really have only one question. When we set up the codes for the 50-foot requirement to be away from a pressurized petroleum pipeline, I'm presuming that there was some input from the fire department saying 50 feet is a safe distance to be away. And now we're saying that 34 feet, 3 3/4 inches is safe. Why are we changing our view? I'm guessing that came from your department at some time, perhaps before you were there. So, I'm asking you to defend something that you probably weren't part of. But reasonable people came up with the idea that we needed a 50-foot barrier from pipelines to commercial establishments to establish a level of safety. And now we're changing that. And I'm just trying to understand what has changed our thinking on that?
Brian Mansfield, Fire Marshal, City of Friendswood. I was not here when they put the ordinance in place. From what I understand, it was in the late 1990s that they had a committee, mostly of citizens. I believe the only staff that was a part of that was the Fire Marshal at the time. And I believe the main driving force was about that, even though this does apply to all structures and all habitable structures, was less about commercial structures and more about residential structures. As Chief Cause mentioned, him living in a house within 8 feet, we had a lot of residential structures that the public didn't really have a good idea what was surrounding them. So there's a lot of folks that were buying property, didn't know there was pipelines in their backyards, putting awnings in, putting auxiliary structures, and not having done any homework whatsoever, which is the opposite of what most commercial properties would entail. Most of the time, the commercial properties are very entailed as far as knowing surroundings, knowing what they're putting in. And also, there's a lot of other things that go into play, like our office does annual inspections of all the commercial properties. Once you pass your inspection on a residential property, for the most part, unless you ask for some permitting process to be done there, no one ever comes back into your property to inspect it again to make sure it's safe as far as standards go. So it was more about a public education piece and putting that in as a greater buffer, just so that way it's on the plats that way, and Aubrey can attest to that when we see the plats come in for the new subdivisions, that it's there and it's a little more vivid for those that are buying and planning to be in those subdivisions just
I
for that.
appreciate that we have to have things identified and people need to know how close to pipelines they are. But going back to my question, somebody, apparently some intelligent people, I'm presuming in 1990s, thank you for that, thought 50 foot was the right number, and now we think 34 feet is a safe number. And I'm taking it, if this was a commercial establishment, I would say, hey, I want to bring the fire department in to say, is this safe? Well, now I've got the fire department asking for an exemption and asking the fire department, is this safe? But I'm asking, what is the safe level, and why do we not think 50 feet is required anymore?
Okay.
All right. As we know in Friendswood, and there are many of us that have been here for many years, and everything began with a story. Every legend, every story, everything began with an incident. We did have a pipeline incident here in Friendswood in the late 80s, all right? We had an issue where an above-ground gas pipeline was struck by a mowing device. And I believe that when this was placed in, that was one of the things that was really fresh in people's mind, was the idea that there had been an issue with a gas line, and we had a gas line issue not long ago. But the 50 foot, I think, may very well have been one of those arbitrary numbers that 100 feet's too far, and 8 feet off my back porch may have been too close. So there really isn't, as far as a safety factor go in. The true safety factor on this is how deep it is. That's the protection. And that's where marking it and making sure that we don't have, the problems we had just after this, since the storm last year, in which, we were getting 5 gas line breaks, residential gas line breaks a week. And then you add that on with the people doing the fiber optic runs, and that added to it too. So what you do is what's current in public's mind. We really don't know what the line is. I have not been able to find anything in any of the NFPA recommendations in either with the Department of Transportation Pipeline and Hazardous Materials recommendations. Almost all of those distance recommendations go to what's called a fixed facility, which is where do you put the 40s and the 80s, the 40,000 barrel tanks, where you put the 80,000 barrel tanks. That's where the majority of that comes in, but not necessarily between the that's left up more to local ordinance.
May I
on
ask
the
a question?
subterranean.
Am I allowed to do that procedurally? So the 50-foot setback, I believe, is it applied to whether it's 1,000 PSI or 600 PSI or just above 600?
No, those are just the ranges that line operates at.
But bear with
It's
me for a moment.
it's a hydrocarbon line.
I recognize that, but that 50-foot offset is really designed for a full range of
Oh, okay.
pressures in those pipelines.
Mhm.
if I'm not mistaken.
And
Right.
And materials. And what we're dealing with here, we know very well. We know what it is. We know its properties, and we know that it's at the lower end of the pressurized level, right? So, in my mind, right, if you typically for this kind of a situation, my experience has been when you put a safety measure on there, it's based on the full extent of whatever it is you're trying to protect, and you can usually approve a variance of some degree, especially if you're at the lower end of that spectrum. So it's part of the reason I didn't have any issue with, moving this line. I wouldn't want to move it to, say, 10 foot within 10 feet of the pipeline, but I certainly think that maintaining 25 feet from the property line and an additional 10 feet beyond that for where the actual pipeline is made sense given what that pipeline consisted of.
Okay.
And the pressure it was at.
I mean, I'm going to go out of order slightly. Sorry, guys. And just that to hopefully add one more thing here that may be helpful. I did find a reference for the 50 feet, and it was on API, American Petroleum Institute, that references 50 feet. But again, that's back to lots of pressures and lots of commodities.
Okay.
So, and what I'm hearing is sort of what you're saying is that with crude oil and at the pressures we're talking about, and I do not want to put words in anybody's mouth, but it's that it sounds like you've gotten comfortable with this spacing under these circumstances of crude oil and the pressures it's under.
Absolutely. If it was ethylene or a more volatile product, yeah, we'd be at a completely different.
And that this pipeline is at the edge of the easement, as I understand it, so that's not seems impossible for something to come in on the other side of it, even closer than we're at, because
It's underneath the high transmission power lines.
That's typical. But what Hill brought up, which I thought was very relevant, is that you can't put a new pipeline in unless you get a permission, and we wouldn't allow permission to go where an existing building.
It's not what that. Well, okay. Sorry, and I'm going further than I intended to at this point, but that's not quite what I heard. What I heard was that the church was not going to, but the church could change. That property could change. They could approve it 10 years from now, 5 years from now. I don't know that we have any restriction. Now, what I did hear is that they would have to come and get a permit from the city, but I don't know what that somebody couldn't get a new permit for that easement if they have the legal right to put a pipeline in. So anyway, I'm just debating that with you slightly. Yes. So anyway, I'm kind of out of turn, but I'll Commissioner Mann.
If I may, real quick.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
If I may, real quick, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background on this. I wanted to see if we could find some minutes on discussion on when this went to 50 foot to see what their line of thinking was. Unfortunately, our minutes don't include, back then, don't include the discussion. But I can tell you that it went to a 50-foot setback back in 2000. It was ordinance number 2000-001, so late 90s was already the discussion there. First thing that they did right out of the chute in 2000. Prior to that, what was the right answer? Apparently, the right answer before that 50 foot, it was 40 foot. Back in 1985, ordinance number 85-19 set that setback at 40 feet. So just wanted to provide that background for you guys.
Hey, Joe, I never gave up I never finished, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, Kathy wanted to go in, but fair enough. I just kind of lost control of the power. Appreciate all your input and such. I'm like Joe, not trying to put Commissioner,
Whatever my name is.
whatever your name is. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if what I'm hearing you say, and tell me if I'm hearing you right, that you would support an ordinance change to retain the 50 feet from a high-pressure gas, ethylene, natural gas, volatile material pipeline, but might lower it to 30 feet for a stabilized crude oil line. Is that what I'm hearing? Or that it would be safe for other businesses
Well,
such as yourself?
right now the issue at hand is a variance. We're not asking for the ordinance to be changed at this time.
But what
Now,
I'm
certainly-
trying to understand is, if it's good for this business, would it be good for other businesses to also be within 30 feet of a crude oil pipeline for their structure? Is it just as safe? What I don't want to do is create special rules for certain people and then not have it be available to others. If we deem that 30 feet is safe for a crude oil line, to have a commercial establishment near 30 feet, and it may well be, I'm not disagreeing with that, because you guys
Yeah.
are the experts on that.
Well, I would submit that we do already have a process in place for that variance for you to take into consideration the situation. If there's another situation like this come up years from now, if they can provide the same backup material, if they can provide the same level of comfort, then I think that that's
I
definitely
guess
something that
the
should
issue
go
is,
through a variance.
Is 30 feet considered safe from a crude oil line?
It's actually what, 34,
34 feet, yeah.
3.75
I'm rounding down.
inches?
If it had been 35 and a half, I would have said 35. But without being too prescriptive, is 30 feet safe? If we had a new commercial establishment, say, I want to build a establishment, some kind of commercial establishment. We're 40 feet from a crude oil line. Can't build it. Damn, we're going to leave this property and it's going to be undeveloped.
I would
But
say
if we already have decided here that 30 feet is safe for particular pipelines, I would like to allow them to build their facility without saying, oh, well, you have to research to find out that really hidden away, somebody knows. Remember 8 years ago, we gave somebody a variance, might do it again if you'd have the right thing. I'd like it to be in the codes out front and center, personally. I think that's the way a proper organization runs like this. If we decide that 30 feet is safe for certain pipelines, and I hear Joe say it, and I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I do want to hear it from your mouth. A crude oil line is different than a gas line in terms of risk and exposure.
yeah, and well, since you're bringing the point up, if it's your direction that you feel that there should be a change in the ordinance.
Well, no, that's not the subject today. I'm just trying to find out if we think 30 feet is safe for a crude oil line. And I'm hearing you say, yes, it is for my establishment, but maybe not for other people's establishment. And I don't really appreciate the distinction. Go.
Do not forget, I'm not trying to step on you on this, but I'm also seeing the bind you're putting them in a little bit, and maybe on purpose, I suspect. But I want to give you a hint, maybe of an answer. I think I'd ask the question slightly different. Is there any reason, or is there any reason you wouldn't approve or support a variance or a change in the ordinance to allow some other commercial entity under similar building design and circumstances, that it's not a house, it's not occupied 24/7 in that area, all the things that apply to this station, that end of the station. Is there any reason we wouldn't, that you three up there, engineering, fire marshal, and fire department, is there any reason you wouldn't consider and allow somebody, some other business to come in at the same 34 feet and whatever it is? Yeah.
If they can establish that it's
For
safe.
crude pressures, and sorry to interrupt, but same
If they can
circumstance.
establish the safe and it's safe and there's the similar level of comfort, from my perspective, I don't see that it's something that I would turn down or disagree with. I would. That's definitely something that ought to be considered. If it's something that you can establish as safe, it's got a similar situation, same level of comfort. So,
And okay, I appreciate that from engineering. Sorry guys,
but I'm a bit of a rebel. In the
no,
engineering world,
well, I hope not. So, fire department. Same question. Is there any reason you wouldn't support some other commercial entity under similar building design, similar pipeline conditions with crude oil? Is there any reason you wouldn't approve that or support an
Absolutely,
ordinance?
Absolutely. I would not have any problem with it
Okay.
at all. I've dealt with it and familiar with it. So.
Is it fair to say you make a distinction between crude oil and more volatile materials?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this would only apply to crude oil in your view, or stabilized
Veg oil.
liquid hydrocarbon kind of thing? Yeah, okay, could be
Yeah, 'cause there-
diesel, or
There's a
could
world
be.
of difference in hydrocarbons.
Right, no, I'm appreciate what you're saying.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm done.
Guys want to make sure? Okay. Commissioner Mann.
As usual, Commissioner Sassen has taken most of my questions. And I do like the level of the answers that we got. There are a lot of the same questions that I had. We want to make sure specifically, as much as I support, one, the fire department being in that location and y'all being safe, I want to make sure that we are as critical with this as we are with every other business and everybody else that comes through. So I think we've done that. The question of why 50 feet and where does that come from, and everybody's looked and nobody can find anything, makes this difficult to then say, okay, well then we can go inside of 50 feet, but we don't know why it was 50 feet. And if it was legend, that's one thing. If
Well,
it was,
As Mr. Matagler.
go ahead, yeah.
Tom, go. The chairman stated, he did look for the American Petroleum Institute. I was specifically looking for crude.
Right.
So that's where I didn't find what I was looking for. And that's why because of the lower volatility of it, it has been put back in the hands of the states rather than on federal doctrine. So.
And I believe with the experts in front of me telling me the pressures, the crude oil, it being buried 36 inches, all these factors, and I understand it. And in a reasonable man theory, this makes sense. And then I keep going back around, but why 50 feet? And then I keep going back around. Why was it that? And not finding out why is a little unnerving as we go through it. And Commissioner Kerner made a very good points about, well, if it was natural gas at 1,000 PSI, and all, that's probably 50 feet. And then we start going, okay, well, 600 PSI is 60% of that. And then crude oil, okay, now we're way down inside of it. So you can have a reasonable man theory, but then Commissioner Sassen brings up a good point. Well, then we need to make that information available to everybody so that the next person trying to do it doesn't say, oh, no, they just let the fire department do it, but then we can't. And I want to make sure that we do the due diligence and do what we have to do to make it correct. And so I really appreciate the answers, because all my question marks that I had here, most of them got answered tonight. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's it.
Commissioner Hinckley.
I'm in support of the project itself. I think it's a great addition to the public safety. So I work pipelines. I don't have a concern with that pipeline. But I do think that possibly the ordinance needs to be looked at, not only on product in the pipeline, but also the difference between underground and above ground pipelines. I'd be more concerned with it being impacted than failing. So I'm in support of the project. So
Commissioner Clark.
I just have 2 points. One of them is the observation that the owner of the pipeline has given us a letter of no contest to this discussion. So clearly they have the most to lose in terms of big financial liabilities and stuff. So that's something to note. And I believe at some point this question has come up, and I can't locate in my memory banks where and when it was, but am I correct in remembering something to the effect that adjacent communities have different setbacks from the same kind of pipeline?
Yes, she just found that City of Houston has 15 feet. I couldn't find anything with Pearland, League City, or LaPorte. And I figured League City and LaPorte, or Baytown doesn't have anything either. So I thought it would be pretty standard across the board with cities to have setbacks from pipelines, but apparently
Does Houston make a differentiation between different types of material in the pipeline?
it says, no, it didn't.
Okay, it just says hydrocarbon?
No, it says, hang on. And it did say 15 feet from the center of the pipeline, which we've talked about as well. Like,
Right? If it's a 30-inch pipeline, you got another 15 inches, right?
yeah.
Well, that'd be helpful.
Well, and two, like if you have a fairly substantial pipeline easement and you go from a pipeline that's installed and then they put one in later, you're not meeting that setback anymore.
Realistically, if you expected more pipelines, you'd stagger them, wouldn't put them off center.
I think the intent was not to do it from the actual base of your easement because you would lose too much ground on the residential side or any development side.
So City of Houston says the building line requirement for property adjacent to an undefined easement for a pipeline that carries flammable material under pressure through or over properties within a subdivision shall be 15 feet from the center line of the pipeline.
Okay?
That's all I have.
Okay. Those were, I got my questions out early, so thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for being patient with us and educating us. Obviously, I think up here I can say for everybody, safety was our concern, and by lowering it from 50, not knowing why it got set for 50, for sure, it just caused us some concern. We wanted to make sure we address the safety of people. So, thank you very much for.
May I say one thing? Yeah, I just wanted to go on. I kind of went on attack mode initially. I apologize for that. I am very supportive of the project. I like what you guys are doing, and I do appreciate what you're trying, how you're trying to get through it. So, and as Commissioner Matrenga said, we are just concerned about the safety and the initial intent and making sure we're not violating the initial intent or missing something somewhere. So, appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Aubrey, I have one question for you.
Okay.
And that is, will we see the site plan for this building? So this is not okay.
Yeah, you'll see it again.
No, I just want, I wanted to, because I wanted to see the layout more than what we saw for just the pipeline purposes.
And I think we sent y'all email notification. They did have to get a variance for the bay doors facing the thoroughfare, which was granted as well. So they're getting real familiar with all of our processes.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, we have a new variance process, and this is our first variance to come before us. And so there's 5 strict requirements for that you have to meet all of them. I won't go through all of them and just because of time, but in my mind, I went through all 5 of those, and I think you meet all those requirements. And so it's a stringent process. Not only that, when it comes time to vote, and I'll remind everybody, this is a 3/4 vote. So there's only 6 of us tonight. It's going to take 5 of us to vote for it to pass. So anything else from anybody else on this? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Shows to be unanimous. Thanks, everybody. Okay, next on our agenda are 2 discussion topics. First is a discussion on proposed amendments to Appendix C, the zoning ordinance, Section 2, establishment of districts, and Section 6, non-conforming uses, structures, and lots, Section 7, schedule of district regulations, Section 8, supplementary district regulations, and Section 20, definitions, to remove the multifamily residential reference from the garden home district zoning district and establish architectural requirements for garden home developments. Becky, turn it over to you.
Yes, sir. So the Ordinance Subcommittee has another topic to bring up. Garden home districts have been a bit of a hot topic here and there, depending on the development. Developers like the smaller lots, and so we started reading our garden home district language, and it was a little bit of a mess. Number 1 is it's called multifamily residential garden home district. A garden home district is not a multifamily use. It is a single family, single structure. It's not a duplex, anything like that. So a little background on it. The garden home district was created in 1992, and it was amended 5 times in the 90s. So a group, much like the subcommittee or the commission, got together. They created this new zoning district, and then throughout the first decade, they had growing pains. They had to figure out how it would work in reality. Most of the changes were setbacks. They had big setbacks, little setbacks, then big setbacks, then little setbacks. I know one of our districts, the setbacks were really small and you can't even park a car in the driveway. So things like that was lesson learned, and they kept making amendments. And I found why they called it multifamily residential garden home district. Only one of their amendments, only multifamily districts were eligible to rezone to garden home district. So that was put in one of the versions, and then it was taken out in one of the versions. The definition, current definition, and original definition says a dwelling unit which is structurally attached to another dwelling unit. Not a single one of our garden home structures are attached to the one next door. And that's not the intent of a garden home district anyways. So the intent of a garden home district, smaller lots, smaller house, less money, less maintenance. Garden home districts also utilize a 0 lot line on one side. It's a little hard to see up there, but when you shift the house to one side of the property, you use that wall as part of your fence, basically, and then that gives you more space on the opposite side, so you can have a little garden or a patio, an inset. We added, so the proposal that the subcommittee came up with is remove multifamily throughout the entire ordinance, because that's not accurate. Remove the intent being geographical limitations and flooding. That's not the purpose of a garden home district either. If flooding is an issue near the development, I mean, there are options to cluster the homes and then put your open space closer to the high-risk areas, so clean that up. And then we borrowed from the city of Deer Park some long-term maintenance items. So when you build on a 0 lot line, your foundation is going to be right there on your property line, which means your roof is going to overhang your neighbor's property, which it's almost like a condominium type arrangement where you have some shared, it's not really shared property. Well, it is, because your house is also your neighbor's fence. So there's a little give and take. It's a kind of a niche market, but people really do like it. In our research, so the city currently has 10 subdivisions that are zoned garden home district, and 3.5 of them are built the way the ordinance, was intended for. I think that's most of it. Tom, do you want to kind of go through the thinking of the subcommittee?
A lot of it is taking something that was kind of vague and offered the opportunity for manipulation, right? So you could, it ended up being to where you could just have a small or a house on a smaller lot if you really wanted to play it. So this really puts the definitions to it that it has to be against that property line. It puts the definition of a true garden home in there. So I think what we've done is pretty well accomplished that. So.
Right. I didn't mention that the other part of the impetus for this, aside from cleaning it up and making it match what actually is happening, is the garden home district can be used to circumvent the minimum lot size, the way that it's kind of badly worded right now, so people can just basically build a single family home smack in the middle of a smaller lot, and there's nothing unique about it aside from it being smaller.
So basically, we've gotten to the point that if you want a garden home district, here's what the requirements are for a garden home district.
Just to add a point, there's all the properties that are zoned garden home district are currently developed. So this would apply to any new, rezoning requests that might come up in the future. Everything currently is spoken for.
If I can add, there was a item that came up before this commission a few years ago to rezone a single-family residential area to garden home district. There was a split vote on our council. The city went ahead and approved it. They are now building up to 4,000 square foot homes with pools on a garden home district land, which was not the intent. When I asked one of the people on city council why they voted for this, they said, well, it was garden homes. We assumed it was going to be garden homes. And so I think their intent was to say, a garden home should look like a garden home, and we don't have that requirement right now. So Becky's doing a good job of making that modification to do what we all think what it means, and there can be misunderstandings if we don't have it match what people's expectation is for it. So, well done.
Go ahead, I'm just
I
like.
just want a quick question. You were saying of the X number, you said 2.5 are, I forget the numbers you said. And then going forward, and I might have misread this. So going forward, your house has to be on the lot line. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And what were the numbers again of the houses, if you have that handy?
So, yes, sir. Friends Knoll and Friends Crossing, those are the two cul-de-sac streets over by Red Top, kind of, off 2351.
Yeah.
Those are true garden home districts. Briar Bend, which is a real small gated community off of Greenbrier. Greenbrier makes that real sharp turn at the end. There's a gated community back there. Those are true on the lot line districts, or homes, I'm sorry. And then Autumn Creek, which is a massive development. Half of it is zoned garden home, and half, I don't know if it's really half, but part of it is zoned garden home and part of it is zoned single family residential. Within the portion that is zoned garden home, some of the streets are built with the houses on the side lot. It's kind of weird.
Okay.
Well, and although West Ranch is a PUD, its garden home section is built just like what you're talking about here with zero setback.
Yes.
I'm 98% certain of that, of my visits out there. I think.
Yeah,
I
that's what I was gonna say. I was curious of that. Is there a phrase in real estate? Oh, this is a nice little garden home area that doesn't go with our definitions, because I don't know that those are all set that way.
I'm pretty sure, based on Google and from my my time visiting out there, that on that street.
So I did look that up, and it just depends on where you look, who you ask. They all call them different things. They all regulate them different ways. Realtor.com basically calls carriage homes, garden homes, cluster homes, courtyard homes, patio homes. Those are all like interchangeable terms. And it went on to say it came into fashion in the 1970s. That was popular with, empty nesters, people nearing retirement, entry-level buyers, which we do need that in Friendswood. We do have a lot of very large, very expensive houses, and some people, they don't want that anymore. And that's part of one of our previous commissioners, like to talk about that a lot, that you need product for different levels and different needs.
Having said that, the garden homes that were just developed are going for $700,000 plus. And so I don't know if that's an entry level. It wouldn't have been when I was trying to buy a house the first time.
But you're not talking about this design. You're talking about.
No, this is something that did not use this design and used
Right.
a garden home as a way of just what you said, Becky, of getting a smaller lot for a large, what I consider a large house.
I mean, it's really separating a garden home from a small lot district.
Right. Well
yes.
put.
Yes, sir. That's probably the best way to put it. This separates a true garden home, patio home from just a small 60-foot lot.
Any other? I think this is great work.
Yeah,
Well-
no, Becky has led us through a lot of these changes, and I think it does make it much more consistent and clear, and really addresses what we think we want to see in garden homes, at least within our community.
Right. The only portions that I was not as comfortable with was coming up with the terms for the long-term maintenance. So I did sit down with our building official and ask him, practically how is this going to work long term? Like how are we going to make sure that we don't end up with structures that are, you know, neighbors fighting over maintenance? You can't come on my property, you know, to fix your brick and that type thing. So he did go through those line items. So we go to the specialist for those those type things. But otherwise, I think we're all on the same page. So if the rest of the commission is comfortable with it, we can move forward with, you know, getting final opinions on the wording from legal counsel and, you know, taking it up to city council.
I think it's a great step forward and improvement over what we have. So I think good job. If there's no other general questions, I do have just two small things for the subcommittee to think about.
Okay.
And these are very, very, very minor. But in C1.2, it says, I wanted you guys, you have a requirement that says there can't be windows, there can't be doors on that 0 lot line side. I'd like you guys to consider opaque windows, like glass blocks, that sort of thing, to allow light to come in, but you can't see in or you can't see out. I mean, you can't see through them. I know I have been in garden homes similar to this that have that in like the master bathroom as an example, that's along that wall. But I've seen where there's different ways of having these what I call, and I don't know the right name, the opaque windows, but the glass blocks that you can't see through. So obviously you don't want a window, and I get that completely, but consider, is there something that you would allow? From a design of a home, I think it would help bring in natural light without creating a privacy problem.
Right, understood. Yes, sir.
Okay. The second thing is, when I was reading through it, was the 8-inch roof overhang allowance onto neighbor's property. You don't say it, and that's in C1.4. You don't say it. I know what you mean there. You mean on the 0 lot line side, but you don't say that.
Okay.
It's
That's a good input.
just very minor, but it's just so that somebody doesn't misuse it later, that we can't. Nobody would, but just in case.
Right. Good catch. Thank you.
That was it. That was just two small things. Anything else from anybody? Good. Okay. Good work by all. Okay. The next item is an update from the planning subcommittee regarding the plan to update the remainder of the comprehensive plan. Aubrey.
Yes, sir. So the planning subcommittee met, and as you all know, we got the future land use map updated last year. And that was a significant piece of the comp plan, but our work is not finished. So in your backup material, we provided a little, somewhat of a timeline. I listed all the sections of the comprehensive plan, the title of that section, and then kind of some notes on, what's going to be needed to update those sections. And then on the very far column, a date range, kind of some, like maybe every other month we'll do a section. Some of the baseline studies section, the census still has, they release their raw data, but you have, I don't know, it's like a 26-page document on how to download these databases. And I think it's seriously like access databases. So they still haven't released their clean census information from 2020. So I'm hoping maybe by mid-year we'll have that and we can update that section. But in the meantime, we can work with engineering and public works and some of the other departments, fire marshal, like they were talking about their spacing of their fire departments and stuff. We have all that information. We just need to get it updated. So we will work through that this year. The second page that was included in your backup material is just a list of all the other master plans throughout the city that we can either reference in our comprehensive plan, just so that people know that they exist. And then we need to come up with a governance plan on updating the comp plan in the future, review and updates. So that's where we're at.
Great. Thank you.
Real quick on that, great job, Aubrey, getting a timeline so we can get stuff done. Until you start setting finish lines, you never get there. So doing that. But one thing to keep in mind with this is we work with a lot of other organizations, departments, and stuff, and we need that information to complete these. So that's one of the reasons it's spread out the way it is. It was a little bit more aggressive earlier, but then when we realized you can't go anywhere without help from other agencies, so we'll get that done, hopefully on timeline, assuming everybody else is working.
And the other thing we talked about was taking the whole year to update the document, and then like first quarter next year doing the public hearings. But not necessarily. I don't feel it's necessary to go to farmers market and concert in the park and all that to do the outreach, because it's not just a map that people can look at. It's gonna be like a 2-inch document, and nobody like it's something that somebody's gonna have to download and read or something. So we'll just go through our normal public hearing, maybe do an extra public hearing or something, but just go through our normal processes for that.
Any questions or comments from you? Okay, thank you, Aubrey. Our next agenda topic is the consideration and possible action regarding future planning and zoning commission meeting dates. Back to you, Aubrey.
Our next regular meeting is Thursday, February 24th, and our first meeting in March would be Thursday, March 10th. No need for changes on those dates.
And we have agenda items for those. You expect those meetings to go forward?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Okay, our final agenda topic is communications, and we'll start with the commissioner updates on liaison assignments or any general topics. I'll start to my left, Commissioner Kerner.
So did I get the name correct? Is it Bria? Thank you so much for advocating for and helping facilitate the development of the sidewalks. As one of the commissioners who is adamant that we need more consistency in our sidewalks, especially in and around our commercial businesses, I thank you very much for doing that. I know kind of it's been a challenge with some of the businesses and some of the locations where we've done sidewalks and then not had them on adjacent properties and then had them. So thank you for advocating for that and for doing all that you do to make that work for us. That's all I had.
Commissioner Sassen.
Yeah, I agree entirely that I'm excited to see that go forward. That's going to be great, using some dead money to help offset some of the costs and having more sidewalks, making it a walkable city right there. It's great. I had the opportunity to go to the ZBOA meeting this week. As Aubrey alluded to, the fire station was also on the agenda there, and it was approved that they could have the bay doors facing the road. There really wasn't an alternative to that, and so it went through unanimously.
Good. Commissioner Mann.
Nothing to add. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Hinckley.
There was no FDDC meeting this week. It was canceled. So we did have a zoning ordinance subcommittee meeting prior to this meeting, discussing the sign ordinance, going through revisions of that. At this point, we're just in the early stages of reading through and identifying anything that may be of issue. That's really it.
Great. Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, I have attended a couple GCCDD meetings, and a couple were canceled. So
Drainage district.
Yeah, drainage district. That they did I say it wrong?
Well, no, you said it exactly right, but not everybody listening.
Sorry. And with the shortened, the removed meetings, the ones that did happen got pretty busy. A lot of actions, a bunch on Crawford Park, which I know was part of our consent agenda tonight, and probably the most interesting or maybe significant thing is they're basically wrapped up at the very end of the Clearview drainage work. They've paid off the last 150 or so thousand, just a tiny bit more, so they'll be moving on to other areas in the city very soon. So.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. I have nothing this evening. I appreciate everybody coming tonight. With that, we do not have a city council member here tonight. Our liaison and alternates weren't able to make it. So I'll go to staff. Aubrey?
Yes, the January DRC report was in your packet material. I think it was just a couple of repeat meetings. We actually, this past Wednesday, finally had a DRC on a new property. We haven't had that in quite some time. So also just wanted to point out the City Council approved second reading of our changes to community care homes ordinance Monday night. And Everybody's probably seen the significant work going on in the downtown district. The new traffic signal mast arms are being installed. The brick pavers are being put in on the edges of the sidewalks. And we also did get approval from TxDOT for the colors for the street signs are going to be the downtown improvement plan colors. And TxDOT, yeah, like orange color. And TxDOT is going to install those. We've actually outsourced the printing of all those signs to a company, and as long as they're done in time, TxDOT's going to install them for us on our new traffic signal mast arms. So, good things in downtown.
Great. Becky? Yes. Great. Karen, anything?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have nothing else. So that concludes our meeting this evening. The February 10th, 2022 Planning and Zoning regular meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.